Welcome to my presentation on cryptography with an emphasis on encryption algorithms. My name is Brian Kraus, and this is for the Introduction to Cybersecurity course, fall of 2021, with instructor Shinping Tucker, PhD. One of the main goals in cryptography is to ensure the confidentiality of data. To hide data in plain sight, there needs to be a way that we can alter it so it cannot be easily read. This is not a relatively new idea, nor is it something that came with the computer age. The method of altering readable text into unreadable text, or ciphertext, goes back to the Egyptian Empire. With all ciphertext, there needs to be a way to process to convert back and forth so ciphertext can be converted back into readable text. This method is commonly called a cipher. Eventually, to make ciphers more complex, math equations or algorithms were used. Nowadays, cipher and algorithms can be interchanged when discussing cryptography. Before we can understand ciphers, we need to discuss how the process of how converting from plain text to ciphertext or encryption and reversing the process or decryption works. Encryption and decryption works like a puzzle. When we put a puzzle together, we need to have some sort of reference, like a picture or shape, so we know how the rest of the pieces go together. With cryptographic ciphers, these are known as keys. A key is simply a randomized set of bits that are used to encrypt and decrypt data. Just like a key that opens a lock, the more complex it is makes the lock harder to pick. This same can be said with a cipher key. The longer the key, the more complex, the more secure the encryption is. Typical key lengths are around 128 to 512 bits for private keys, and 1024 to 4096 bits for public keys. With modern ciphers, there are two different types of key systems. In a symmetric key system, a single key is generated that will both encrypt and decrypt data. Once the key is used to encrypt the data, the encrypted data and the key must be exchanged with a person or end device that wants to be able to decrypt that data. This isn't very efficient, as to be effective, the encrypted data should be transported separate from the key in case of interception. To solve this, asymmetric key system was developed where two mathematically bound keys are generated, one kept private and one public key that can be transmitted via open communications. Without the key pair, the data is useless, as the key that is used to encrypt the data cannot be used to decrypt it. The other key must be used for decryption. This leads us to the main topic of the presentation. I find ciphers and the math behind them intriguing. I enjoy spy movies, so the act of hiding data in plain sight, whether it be ciphers or in steganography, makes me reevaluate how data can be securely transmitted. There are many methods that can be used to encrypt and decrypt data. These methods are called encryption algorithms. The National Institute of Standards and Technology summarizes encryption algorithms as follows. We have triple DES encryption, RSA encryption, Advanced Encryption Standard, or AES, two-fish encryption algorithm, blowfish encryption algorithm, IDEA encryption algorithm, MD5 encryption algorithms, and HMAC encryption algorithms. For this presentation, I'm going to focus on the top three, which are typically used for transmission of encrypted data over the Internet. AES, or Advanced Encryption Standard, is one of the most trusted forms of encryption that is currently used by the United States and in the private sector secure transmission of data. Natively, AES uses 128-bit keys, but it can also support up to 192-bit and 256-bit keys. This uses the symmetric key system and is considered to be unbreakable to all types of attacks except for brute force attacks. Triple DES, or Data Encryption Standard. Triple DES is a widely used symmetric data encryption standard. Its predecessor, or just DES, which was a 56-bit key cipher. DES has been known to be easily cracked due to its key length, so Triple DES uses the same technique just 3 times. Triple DES offers 3 different key options. 3 independent keys equaling 168 bits, 2 independent keys, and then re-encrypt the second key with the first key, which gives us 112 bits, or 3 identical keys, which is meant to be backward compatible to DES, used a 56-bit key to encrypt the data basically 3 times. It is highly recommended never to use this option. RSA. Named by the 3 inventors, RSA is an asymmetric key system that uses large prime numbers and factorization to create keys. The theory is that it is simple to take 2 prime numbers and then multiply them together to get a third number. Although we know what the first 2 numbers were, it would be impossible to figure out, given only the third number, which 2 numbers were originally used to get that third number. Okay, before I start reading about the history, I just want to explain the picture here on the screen. This is actually an Enigma machine. I know in the history here, my first date is 1945. The Enigma machine was actually used a lot in World War II. Initially by the Axis of Powers, they were able to encrypt battle orders in World War II, dating way back to the 1930s. It is commonly known that if the Enigma machine wasn't cracked, the chances of the Allies' victory in World War II would have been pretty slim. So I felt, even though I don't really talk about the Enigma machine, it was important to at least show one of the grandfathers of modern cryptography. Now let's talk a little bit about history. As mentioned in the overview, the art of encryption has been around for centuries. However, in 1945, Claude Shannon of Bell Labs published an article called A Mathematical Theory to Cryptography, which is said to be the beginning of modern cryptography. Fast forward a few years to 1973 and we find the first real computer-based use of encryption. With the help of IBM, DES, their data encryption standard, was adopted by the United States as the encryption standard until it was cracked in 1977. Another milestone happened in 1976 when Whitfield Diffie and Martin Hellman published a research paper on what will be defined as the first introduction of keys, specifically asymmetric key pairs. This was the first time that a key was not prearranged but mathematically tied to each other. RSA was developed in 1977 by Ron Rivest, Aldi Shamir, and Leonard Edelman in an attempt to create a symmetrical or a one-way function of encryption to be less complex than the asymmetrical encryption. In 2000, AES replaced DES and is one of the only standards that are available royalty-free today. There have been several other milestones since, but none more important, in my opinion, than in 2005 when elliptical curve cryptography, a public key-based exchange system, was developed. I note that milestone here, the elliptical curve cryptography, is used in many devices today, like IoT devices, because of its simplicity and the fact that it used less computing power than other standards. Current trends. The image on the screen is actually how we calculate elliptical curve cryptography, basically using a mathematical formula to create a curve, and then we plot points along that curve. Current trends. With the vast amounts of IoT devices out on the market today, it is important to figure out the best way to enable secure communication for these devices. As mentioned previously, elliptical curve cryptography is a lightweight option to solve this problem. ECC, AES, and RSA are still widely used today to make our communications more secure. We find one of these standards in everything from sending secure emails to VPNs or performing searches on Google. Encryption algorithms make our lives safer and are more secure with their use in common day activities like online banking or driving through traffic signals. Challenges. With every piece of technology out there, there's always problems that evolve. Bruce Schneider, an American cryptographer, once said, "Every secret creates a potential failure point." All it takes is a little time and computing power to crack some of the best encryption systems out there. If this was not possible, we would all still be using DES. I have seen many charts out there that list the key strength versus decryption time. All those charts depend on the power of the processing that are being used and the time allowed to try to decrypt them. When quantum computing becomes a reality, I'm sure that even the strongest keys from the above-mentioned standards can be cracked. However, we can fight fire with fire. Once quantum computing becomes a reality, then so can quantum encryption or quantum key distribution. And that is what the image on the screen shows, how we actually use light sources to create encryption keys. There are also some ethical issues that have come up involving encryption. Malicious actors also use encryption to purposely lock files, like in ransomware, or transmit data securely so that the law enforcement can intercept and read the contents. There have been several debates on Capitol Hill on whether backdoors should be allowed to circumvent encryption on encrypted devices, which really hasn't gained any traction. Regardless, I feel the good of encryption outweighs the bad. Another challenge is program overhead. When it comes to encryption, depending upon the encryption standard used, it takes extensive time and processing power to encrypt the data. Encryption in real-time applications can be a big challenge if the data needs to be delivered in a timely manner. Lightweight standards like the elliptical curve cryptography can help, but no standard is seamless. With that ends my presentation. Please feel free to post questions in the discussion board. I have a list of my references here. Thank you for watching.